6 o'clock. We are going to officially call this meeting to order. City of Aztec City Commission regular commission meeting for February 25th, 2020. Commissioner Sipe is going to lead us in the invocation, and then our state champion wrestlers are going to lead us in the pledges. So if you would all please stand.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we have the freedom to gather here tonight to make decisions for our city and to just be able to have the freedoms that we have in our country. And we hope that you'll bless the men and women who have secured those freedoms for us through the years and continue to do so. Dear Lord, we are grateful for all these young people that are here tonight and these young athletes, and we hope that you'll bless and keep each of them safe and help them to continue to be safe in whatever journey whether the rest of their high school career or as they move on. We're grateful for each and every one of them, dear Lord, and their accomplishments. Dear Lord, we just hope that you'll help guide us in making the best decisions that we can for our city. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico as the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Okay, Cheryl, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Price?
Here.
Commissioner Sykes?
Here.
Commissioner Lewis?
Here.
Commissioner Randall?
Here.
All are present?
All right, next up is agenda approval. If there are any items that do not meet the approval for being heard on this evening's agenda, now is the time to remove those items. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as given.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda as given.
I second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next is consent agenda. Items placed on the consent agenda will be voted on with one motion. If any item proposed does not meet the approval of all commissioners, a commissioner may request that the item be heard under items from consent agenda. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda as given.
Mayor, I move to approve this evening's consent agenda as given.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. The agenda doesn't officially show the presentation for the state champion wrestlers because they won over this weekend and the agenda was already finished. So we wanted to go ahead and make it as timely as possible. So I was talking to Coach Maxwell. He's calling at the high school, and I didn't know all the history because I haven't been here as long as some folks, but I guess before this three-peat that they're on right now, they hadn't won a state title since 2009, is that right? Coach? 02. He's clarifying with his Wikipedia back there. 02. So it seems like the culture of state champions is getting pretty firm back here in Aztec, New Mexico. So, and for the first time ever, we'll have a female state runner-up team. So I just want to welcome the wrestlers, welcome the coach, welcome everybody that took part. And I know there's a lot of friends and family and assistant coaches that all play a huge role in these young people's lives, getting them prepared. It's not like it might seem like they do this for a living sometimes, but they're high school students. You know, they go to church, they have outside activities, they have chores, hopefully, at home. You know, and they're still competing at a very high level year in and year out, and they've established a culture of winning and toughness and excellence that we can all be very, very proud of here in Aztec. So without any further ado, I'd like to let Coach Bonnie Maxwell come up and introduce his wrestlers and say a few words. Thanks, Coach.
Do our girls first? Okay.
Yeah. Whatever you want. Yes, sir.
This was the first sanctioned female state wrestling tournament where girls were state runners-up. We had 3 state champions and another one that contributed. Okay, so girls stand up. Nina came back to us at what, 3-4 years, and then she was state champ. Michaela's a state Caitlin over there qualified, and Princess is not here, she was a state champion as well. For our boys that are here, our 106 is our second 8th grade state champ ever, Brandon Valdez. 113, Paul Beagle, Paul Beagle contributed to the state tournament. Jeremy McBride, Jeremy was 4th for us. We had to pull him out of the tournament for a shoulder injury. So he won his consolation semi-match and we pulled him. Dylan St. Grain finished 3rd this year. Sammy Mitten contributed, scored points at the tournament. Greg Berger, senior state champ. Bodie Woolley, another senior state champ. Zane Chapman, senior state champ. Doc Altisi is not here, he was a junior state champ. Hunter Riddick placed 5th for us this season. Logan Kleepak, senior, sacrificed a lot for the team, gave up his position, so he moved up a weight class so we can fill our lineup in. He placed 4th. Then we got Brody Dalton. Brody qualified last Saturday, a week ago Saturday. Sunday he went in and had surgery for a blood clot on his spine. He was up with that because he was paralyzed and realized it. But he qualified but could not wrestle. Caleb Barzias, junior state champ. Then we got Josh Hannon, who was our heavyweight that scored points for the team. So this is your 2020 state champions. We have a tremendous coaching staff. And this one, you know, Coach Hanson back home, 7 full seasons back. We had Coach Robinson, Coach Stout, Minton, Stroud. We got a great staff. These kids have knowledge coming out their ears from the staff that's in the room. So I think the coaches are amazing. They do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a second unless you're super excited about the rest of your city government. If you want to leave, we'll take a second so you guys can kind of file out if you want. If you want to hang, that's even better, but I can imagine, yeah.
There we go.
That was a quick decision.
Asking a bunch of high schoolers if they want to sit and listen to somebody talk. Pretty sure we knew what that was going to happen. Okay, well, very good. And again, congratulations. It's exciting. Good to be a part of that. So, okay. Next is a presentation that was already on the agenda. Mr. Arvin Trujillo from Four Corners Economic Development, or FORSED as we call it. Welcome, Mr. Trujillo. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Good evening. I'd like to give you a short presentation on what is happening with Four Corners Economic Development, where we are on a number of different initiatives, and what we hope to be achieving as we continue our efforts forward. In the presentation that I have before you, again, Four Corners Economic Development is a nonprofit organization promoting the economic viability here in San Juan County and in the general Four Corners region as a whole. The organization is focused on working with diverse stakeholders in the four-state region to establish economic diversity and viability here in the region, given the fact that right now, one of our major economic drivers is transitioning. The energy sector is transitioning at this point. So we're looking at what is the next step. What's our plan B as we begin to look at this transitioning happening within the region? Because if you think about it, if you think about the full Four Corners area, at the height of the development of the energy sector with oil and gas going in the 80s and 90s, we had essentially 6 power plants in the general region. We had 7 mining operations supplying coal to those power plants. Average salary was between $70,000 and $95,000 at that point in time. And so, again, there was a huge boom both in oil and gas and coal. But since that time, now we've had the Mojave generating station closed, Navajo generating stations closed and paged. Cholla is looking to close in 2025. Escalante is going to close at the end of this year. San Juan generating station right now is scheduled to close in 2022. Four Corners, APS simply recently came out with the announcement that they will probably end up closing Four Corners in 2031. You've got the two operations in Black Mesa, the coal operations that have shut down. You have the operations that were next to Window Rock that have shut down. You have San Juan Mine, which will close because it's a mine mouth operation with San Juan Generating Station. Once that closes down, you have Navajo Mine, which will also shut down in the event when the Four Corners Power Plant shuts down. With the shutdown of both Cholla and Escalante, you're looking at the Peru plant operation shutting down and other plants in the general region which feed those two power plants off the rail also shutting down. So again, there's a huge transitioning happening. And we're beginning to look at how do we begin to focus on this region and what's our next steps. Again, some of the common areas we're looking at, one is how do we bring our communities together? How do we look at San Juan County as a whole and begin to determine how best to bring investment and development into this area? Again, one of the main things we've been working on is this overall strategic plan that we've included many of the communities here in San Juan County in developing what should be our focus, where should we be putting our efforts in terms of identifying services and supporting small and mid-range businesses. Not necessarily Four Corners economic development, but we've got a number of resources out there. How do we begin to coordinate those resources so we're all going in the same direction? And so that's one of the things that we're focused on. We're also looking at data collection. How do we begin to look at data? Because the Four Corners area is very unique in many aspects. If you look at the four corners of each state, those four corners are not necessarily tied to the economics of their particular state. We here in San Juan County are more connected to southwest Colorado and southeast Utah than we are with the rest of Utah, with the rest of New Mexico. Same thing with southwest Colorado. They're not connected to Denver, to Boulder, to Pueblo. They're connected to us and to southeast Utah, as well as communities in southeast Utah and those on the Navajo Reservation as far as Kayenta. And so you look at that and you look at what San Juan County has going all the way to the county line as far as Nayezi and Sheep Springs, all of that comes to this region here and doesn't necessarily go towards Gallup or Grants or those areas. And so again, how do we begin to look at data collection and how do we begin to look at how to utilize that as a collective group? And so we're focusing on regional development and enhancing our infrastructure. Everybody tells me now we should have done this in the past. Yes, we should have, but we didn't. But now's the time to do it. And so that's what we're focused on. If you turn to the next page on the strategic planning, we have 5 different areas that we're focused on: partnerships, organizational development, target industries, recruitment, workforce development, data acquisition, and utilization. We have goal teams in each of these areas consisting of community members throughout the county who are helping us develop the objectives under these major goal areas. How do we look at partnerships? How do we begin to learn to play with each other? We don't know how to play with each other. We've got to begin to learn that. Not only the municipalities and the county, but the Navajo Nation is a part of San Juan County. How do we begin to look at those partnerships? Many are unaware, but Mountain Ute is also a part of San Juan County. So how do we begin to partner with that aspect? Looking at organizational development. Four Corners economic development at first used to be focused mainly within the central portion of the county, but we've expanded now, looking at the full San Juan area. Because again, there's a lot of diversity here in this region. We talk about diversity as being a strength, but we don't utilize it as a strength. So that's why we've incorporated many of the communities, Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, Kirtland, Shiprock. We brought the chapters in. We're working on those aspects to begin to build our abilities to look and see what each area, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, but more importantly, begin to communicate with one another, because we're finding that everybody has the same challenges, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, there are opportunities for everybody, and again, the idea is to collectively look at that and coordinate those aspects. Organizationally, we're building the organization, we're building the board in a way to more effectively work with the communities. We're targeting industries. We're really looking at what areas does it make sense to put our efforts in. We don't want to be caught in a position where we're throwing mud against the wall and saying, man, I hope that works. We don't have the time, nor do we have the money to do that. And so we're focusing our efforts on identifying those areas of strength that we can utilize to begin to build our development and our diversity and begin to work towards economic development for the full region here. And we look at the Four Corners region because San Juan County is not an island unto itself. We have to go through different communities in order to reach other markets, other customer bases in the region here as well as throughout the country. And so again, we're working on workforce development. How do we prepare for the future? Those young people that you saw here, how do we prepare things so that those young people will have a job ready for them or can be educated so they can be able to work here in the region? I was lucky. I got a mining engineering degree. I was able to come back. I was able to work within the area, contribute to the communities, and be a part of these communities throughout most of my working career. And so again, that's what we want to afford people, that opportunity, and continue to build our middle class here in the area. And we will utilize that by using data. Right now, as I said, we're not really connected to the rest of New Mexico as far as our economic viability is concerned. But nothing's really captured to show that. And so we're beginning to develop that data so that we can capture that and get a better picture of ourselves. So again, if you look at our general approach just quickly, we're focused on regional development. We're focused on how we can communicate with one another. How do we look at the different aspects here in the region in order to take advantage of those opportunities here in the area? We're working on how to build those bridges along the way. What assets do we have that we can then partner with other areas here in the region? One thing that I've said to people, and I've gone out and just talked to different businesses, different entities, and a lot of people say they have different areas of challenge, but they come back and say, I asked that question, what challenges do you see? People continue to say we need working capital into the region here. And I ask people, do you know that you're surrounded by $7 billion of venture capitalism around us? We got the Navajo Nation with $3 billion in their permanent fund. We have the Southern Ute with $3 billion in their growth fund. We have the Lagunas with $1 billion in their development fund. How much of that money is invested here in the Four Corners region? We have to look at that question and figure out, how do we do this? And again, the question comes back, well, it's too hard to do business with the tribes. Well, the Gulf region is doing just great business with Southern Utes. All their money is going to the Gulf. New York City is doing great business with the Navajos. All their money is going to New York City. So in essence, the rest of the U.S. is using Navajo money, except us. Laguna, they're sending their money along the Rio Grande corridor. Their money is being utilized in those areas. So how do we begin to look at this and form those partnerships so that we have access, that we have partnerships that will give us access to that type of working capital so that we can work with this in partnerships. So what is FORSED working on now? What are we actually doing right now? You turn to the next slide. What is the Future Forum? We've collectively been able to bring the 4 states together. We've brought the tribes in with us. The first meeting, we had 140 individuals come. The second meeting, we had about 95. In essence, the second meeting was supposed to be an invitation-only meeting for about 65 people to really get some discussions going. Other people heard about it. We ended up with 95 people, but we incorporated them in. So here we began to find out that there were common issues, there were common opportunities, there were common challenges that all of the communities were looking at. And they began to recognize there are some real possibilities for the Four Corners region to come together and work and realize some real viable projects looking into the future. That was through Forums 1 and Forum 2. As a result of Forum 2, we came up with a priority order of sectors that they identified as priority. One was connectivity and IT infrastructure. 2 was Four Corners marketing. 3 was local foods, local people. 4 was workforce development. 5 was regional transportation. 6 was quality health care. That's what the people identified. We confirmed that by having a survey that was sent out. We had over 500 respondents to that survey from people throughout the Four Corners area. That's what they saw as priorities. And that gelled with what we saw in Forum 2.0. Looking at what else we're doing, we recently signed a memorandum of understanding between San Juan County and the Navajo Nation to collectively begin to look at how we can bring rail to San Juan County, develop a right-of-way, and get things in place so that we have a connection between San Juan County and the I-25 corridor. We're looking at a value-added entity. Right now, we're looking at petrochemical, but there's some other things looking at natural gas development on how we can utilize a product that we can then transport by rail that will help with the ROI, with that overall project. We had the signing ceremony last week. Not only did we have individuals here from San Juan County attend that signing ceremony, we had individuals from Southwest Colorado. We had tribes. We had the Southern Ute. We had the Ute Mountain Ute. We had the Navajo, all there, supporting this effort. And so again, we are beginning to build that piece to say, what do we do? What's that plan B as we begin to look at that? And we're going to be developing a business proposal in partnership with the Navajo Nation in order to bring rail and to develop a value-added product to transport on that rail, because that will enhance NAPI, that will enhance Raytheon, that will enhance PESCO, that will help small manufacturing businesses in the area, that will begin to look at the development of service-related industries to support these areas in the region. So that's another thing we're working on. The third initiative we're working on is broadband development. Many of our officials here in Aztec are working with us on that broadband planning. The idea here is to bring broadband throughout San Juan County, not just limited to where cable goes, but looking and developing a middle-mile plan that will look at the full county and get good reception throughout the county, both tribal and non-tribal. And by doing so, developing that plan, having that ready, we can then begin to partner with the other regions in the Four Corners area. Southwest Colorado, you got Region 9 and Region 10 that will reach up to the I-70 corridor. They both have their middle mile plans just about developed in terms of cost and what it will take to build those. You have San Juan County, Utah, which has just about have their middle mile plan done. That will take the current broadband that they do have going to Blanding and extended that down to Aneth and Navajo Mountain. And they've got that in the works and are looking to get that done by 2022, 2023. You have the Navajo Nation now that's working on developing their middle mile plan. that will extend throughout the reservation, which would include the southern portion of San Juan, and they right now have a fiber optic line that extends on down south from Shiprock all the way down to Gallup, and they're extending that inward into the Navajo Nation. And so we're looking at that. We're also in partnership with San Juan, with Southwest Colorado, the Southwest Colorado Council of Governments. There, we've developed a partnership to get an engineering study done that would construct a fiber optic loop that would connect Durango to Cortez, from Cortez down past the state line to Shiprock, Shiprock up the highway to Farmington, Farmington here to Aztec, Aztec back up to Durango, thereby developing redundancy here within Southwest Colorado and San Juan County. Beginning to look at how we begin to tie in the metropolitan areas, looking at, we are currently tied into Albuquerque. How do we tie this loop into that? We're also looking at what Southwest Colorado is doing and working with Utah. They're looking at a line that will connect Dove Creek, Colorado, with Monticello, Utah. That will get them into the Utah system. Then there's connectivity all the way to Salt Lake City. There's an Arcadian group also that wants to connect from Phoenix all the way to Denver, and they want to come through this region. We're wanting to bring these pieces together and look at things from a regional aspect to begin to look at the Four Corners region as a whole and to have a plan in place that will begin to, that we can then publicize to Congress and to other folks, because right now Congress is looking at the possibility of funding upwards of $10 billion towards this effort in a rural USA. And they are particularly looking at tribes, and the better we can begin to partner with our local tribes, the stronger our coalition becomes. The more noteworthy it becomes to the federal government as well as to the states. And so again, that's where Forset is focusing its effort. So again, why should Aztec be a part of this effort? Well, again, we would like Aztec to be at the table to provide us information, areas of importance that are important to you. What's critical to you? We're not here to tell you or to dictate to you what is important or not. We just want to know, so there may be other things other communities are doing, maybe that we're doing, that we can partner effectively together in order to build our efforts to obtain needed funding, needed resources, in order to achieve new infrastructure development here in the Four Corners region. By doing that, we're able to identify new projects, possibly new opportunities will reveal themselves, especially as we continue to build our relationships with the tribes. They're looking for investment just like everybody else. They are heavily invested in the energy sector. What opportunities are there for other things? They're looking. So can we provide those opportunities to them? What kind of challenges are facing the city of Aztec? And what is Aztec focused on, and how can we look at that in the context of the entire county? How do we involve that with the entire county so that we can work on these collectively, so that we're able to utilize our overall capabilities? We can merge resources together. And again, this is an investment into our collective future. We're looking at this as a partnership with all the different entities here in San Juan County. I'm a lifelong resident of San Juan. I went to Kirtland, okay? And, you know, I understand this area. And this is home for me, just like for many of you. And I've been able to benefit from the energy sector. I'm a mining engineer. I worked for then Utah International. Then I worked for BHP. I went up to Wyoming and I worked for the Powder River Basin, one of the Powder River Basin companies up there, Mobile Coal. I came back down. I worked for the Navajo Nation for a number of years. Then from there I came back and I worked for Four Corners Power Plant at APS. Now I'm here doing this. And the idea here is, how do we begin to look at possibilities? How do we begin to bring our collective energies together in order to achieve in what many people have told me is impossible? Ladies and gentlemen, I've been there. I was a part of that team that we brought resolution to the Navajo-Hopi land dispute. I was a part of the team that brought the water rights conclusions between the state of New Mexico and the Navajo Nation. I was part of the team that built a hotel at Monument Valley when people told me there's no way you're going to ever build a hotel at Monument Valley. I was a part of the team that widened 550 and 491. You know, those are things that people before have said were impossible, but we found ways to do it. But we did it collectively. A lot of smart people here in the room. I'm looking at how do we bring that knowledge base together and really look at the challenges before us and find ways to begin to assist our different communities so that at the end, when we're ready to move on, sit on our rocking chairs, kick back a little bit, we have our young people who are now in a position to have good, viable jobs in the area, who can raise their families, who want to come back, who have things here that they want to do. I would like that for my children. I worked hard to put my kids through school and through college. But you know what? I got one child that lives in Baltimore, Maryland. I got another child that lives in Denver, Colorado. And I got another child that lives in Portland, Oregon. I would like them here. But again, they've got to go to where they can see their careers advance and grow. Can we provide that opportunity here in San Juan County and in the Four Corners region? That's what Four Corners economic development is all about. And I'm open to questions.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Arvin.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Trujillo?
I don't have any right now. Thank you.
Not right now. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure thing, Commissioner. Thank you.
So I just very briefly was curious about the other parties that might be, and I know it's likely a little early, but about the rail, the rail project. And correct me if I'm wrong, this, Forsyth and the area has been kind of working towards this or discussing it for some time. I think that's fair to say. Is that right?
We've been discussing it, yes.
So what are some of the other players involved besides the county and the Navajo Nation, and maybe kind of, if you could give us an idea of kind of the pulse of that, of their willingness or enthusiasm towards partnering with the county and the Navajo Nation? Are there any other major stakeholders, I guess?
Well, right now, Mr. Mayor, we're at the very early stages of this. We did do a press release and we did a general announcement with the signing ceremony, which I have to say I was just looking at a regional announcement of this. But we've been getting calls as far as Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, New Orleans, about what's happening here. And really people are beginning to take notice. As you said, we've always been in discussions.
Right.
Now we're in that implementation stage of saying, okay, let's go see about getting it done. Now we've got the Navajo Nation. Just at the signing ceremony, we had a number of entities, such as the Ute Mountain Utes. They came forward and heard the presentation, saw what happened, came up to me. They want me to go and speak before their council. They're saying, we're interested in getting involved. Okay. How can we do that? We're also looking at, NAPI is very much supportive of this. Raytheon is supportive of this. We have a number of the smaller manufacturing groups in Farmington who are really looking at how can, they're asking me how can they help? How can they help move this forward? But right now, it's really working with the Navajo Nation and really helping them devise that plan and work in partnership and help develop a proposal that would be beneficial to all parties and to keep things very open. And again, we're at the very beginning stages of this. I hope to have more information as we really get going further into the summer. But the idea here is we will have a communication plan in place where we will keep everybody informed as to where we are, what we're doing, what's happening, and if there are areas where we would like your assistance, we won't be shy about coming to you and asking for your support or your assistance in different areas. But again, that's kind of what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a lot of people are taking notice as to what's happening here in Four Corners. And I never knew there were that many people who are real interested in seeing a rail here in the Four Corners area. But I've been proven, from what we're seeing right now, I seem to be proven wrong.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Anybody else want to? Okay.
Good.
Thank you, I
Thank you, sir.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next is citizens' input. Is there anybody signed up for citizen? Okay. We will move right along to, there are no business items on tonight's agenda, so we're going to jump right into it. The quasi-judicial hearings were land use, and we have two tonight. The first one is conditional use permit 1902 to allow a church in a C1 district. The second one, item B, is a conditional use permit 20-01 to allow a tanning salon in an O1 district. So if I could, can I get the, is there anybody that signed up? Okay. All right. So I am going to move into the exciting reading of this land use hearing procedure. Now, are there folks that are here to speak on the behalf of either one of these land use? So we need to sign up on the sign-in sheet, please. So while we're doing that, if everybody's okay with it, I'm going to go ahead and read the fine print, so to speak, here on this land use hearing procedure for February 25th, 2020. The following hearing procedure is for all hearings on tonight's agenda. A land use hearing registration form is located at the clerk's table for those who wish to receive a copy of the results from this hearing. You must provide your full name and current mailing address in order to receive a copy of the land use hearing order. If you wish to testify and provide comment on the matter at issue, you must register with the clerk on the land use hearing registration form and be sworn in with staff, the applicant, identified parties, witnesses, and interested persons. Following is the order of presentations. Staff will summarize the staff report to the extent necessary to enable those present to understand the issues before the commissioners. Then the commission members may ask questions of staff, and then cross-examination by applicant and parties. Second, applicant, to include their witness or witnesses, have up to 15 minutes. The commission members may ask questions of the applicant. Cross-examination by staff and parties. Witnesses may be cross-examined but do not have the authority to cross-examine. Third is parties, parties to include their witness or witnesses, 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes for each. The commission members may ask questions of the parties, and then cross-examination by staff and the applicant. And again, witnesses may be cross-examined but do not have the authority to cross-examine. Fourth are interested persons. They have up to 5 minutes each. Those who do not own property within 100 feet of the subject property would be considered interested persons. The commission members may ask questions of interested persons, and then we allow cross-examination by staff, applicant, and the parties. Interested persons may be cross-examined but do not have the authority to cross-examine. We will then close the hearing to all testimony, and then the commission may discuss the issue amongst themselves. Commission will then make a decision and issue findings of fact and conclusions of law. Moving to a closed session pursuant to New Mexico Statute 10.15.1.H-1, the Open Meetings Act exception. Continue the public hearing until a specified time, or take the matter under advisement and announce their recommendation at a specified time. Okay. Is everybody signed in that? Okay. Okay, we are now moving into the land use hearing part of 9. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the City of Aztec Commissioners to hear any of the hearings on tonight's agenda? Hearing none. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal biases to be declared by a commission member?
No.
If so, no, I have none.
No.
If so, please state the biases or conflict at this time. Again, check with the panel. Have there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matters that a commission member needs to declare?
No.
Well, let's just to be safe, we were all at the candidate forum last week. And that question was directly brought up. So
That's true.
technically we did, that might be considered ex parte.
Okay, in that case.
But we were there. I think I can state from my behalf, and I'm pretty confident with the rest of us, that none of us discussed this as a group. We didn't discuss any of the things that were talked about at the candidate forum, but we're just kind of making sure that we cover all our bases, and I talked to Mr. Gobble about this just to be safe. So other than that, beyond that, is there any other ex parte that anybody needs to bring up or mention? None here. Okay.
No.
Okay. Now, will staff, the applicant or applicants, and this is for both hearings, just by the way, identified by commission, all witnesses, and any interested persons wishing to testify regarding the conditional use permit 19-02, a request to allow a church in C1 limited retail / neighborhood commercial zoning district located at 222 North Main Ave, and conditional use permit 2020-01, a request to allow a beauty and tanning salon in a 01 office and institutional zoning district located at 300/302 Ash Street. So would those folks please stand, those of you that have signed in, and staff, of course, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, please be seated. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So the first one is the New Harvest Church. Mr. Saavedra?
That's first on our agenda, Mayor.
Right,
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. City
thank you.
Commissioners.
Good evening.
So, we are back. This item was tabled back in early January, and so we're bringing this back forward. Thank you, Ed. Of course,
It's a little hard to see.
There we go.
all right. This application for a conditional use permit, 1902, comes before you. This is a request from New Harvest Church to allow a church in a commercial zoning district, otherwise known as the C1 Limited Retail and Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District. This item was presented before you in early January, was tabled to hear from the Economic Development Advisory Board. They have since reviewed this application in a public hearing and made a motion, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But for anybody in the audience that's not aware, we're going to go through this one more time, just very quickly. This is the church, already located at 222 North Main Avenue. So this is, again, located in a C1 district. It is also located in our Metropolitan Redevelopment Area, otherwise known as the MRA. Subject property, C1 district. This is Main Avenue. This is Safeway. This is City Hall. So this is why we're here. So if anybody in the audience is wondering why we're even coming forward with this, is that pursuant to our zoning code, a church is not stated as a use by right that is allowed to go into a C1 district. So because of that, what happens when we don't have a specific use listed, they have to come before City Commission for approval. This is the section of the code found in the Land Use Code. Codified in 2007. Prior to that, it's been in its existence as early as 1999. Nothing's changed. It's always been the same. This issue, of course, as mentioned last public hearing, Planning and Zoning Board back in 2000 dealt with a similar issue. Same situation. This is the MRA district. This was a Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan approved by the City Commission in 2018 that basically wanted to carve out this area for, as the name suggests, to redevelop, to promote businesses. Subject property right there. This was the recommended plan within the MRA, this corridor to be developed as commercial. This is a bird's eye view, subject property. Again, subject property. Street view. Prior to that, it was a lending company, and then prior to that, Total Laundry. This was our recommendation originally, back in January, and part of that recommendation came from an analysis that a church is not a business. Okay? If we have a zoning district that calls for businesses and a metropolitan redevelopment plan that says there should be businesses, well, it didn't fit in that pattern. So as a result, we looked at what a church does. It's not a business. It's not a residential. It's a unique situation. And so what are some of the issues with a conditional use that we have to examine and put forth through analysis? Well, by and large, churches are not occupied all days of the week, and so as a result, they appear vacant. That was in the MRA document. So as a way to basically soften that blow, a condition was, well, if you make it look like a business with flowers and bushes and what have you, and if you leave the lights on, well, maybe it'll look vacant, and it'll look somewhat like a business, and it'll fit into the zoning district. That was one of the conditions that were put forward. There was other conditions within the staff report. I know you've all heard it before. I know most of the folks have heard it before. Don't need to rehash that. But the new information that came about was EDAB. EDAB discussed this item, lengthy discussion. The pastor was there. He presented his case. EDAB recommended approval of this conditional use permit with the conditions found in the staff report. However, they added an additional condition, though it is a little vague. They indicated that they want the church to be actively searching for commercial property within the time frame of their lease. So that was the condition that they put forward. They recommended approval with the listed conditions. And with that, I will stand for any questions or concerns.
Open up for questions for Mr. Saavedra. No, we can't. Yeah, we're not in that. Any commissioners have any questions of Mr. Saavedra?
No.
Okay. I know we went back and forth, and I don't think there's really a need to rehash the entirety of it because we were all here last time and we kind of went through it. Have they, to your knowledge, have the folks that are running the church met all requirements for occupancy, for otherwise, without having, the conditional use permit, but if it were approved, are they pretty much ready to go as if any other business? Have they gone through the steps necessary to occupy the property? It could be a dog grooming place or a restaurant or whatever. But have they met those necessary requirements to occupy that space for what they use it for? I don't know if I'm...
If you could be more specific, please.
Is there any inspections required of them? Are there any additional permitting that they need to do to occupy the space?
From City of Aztec standpoint, no. Now, one thing that I'm not aware of is, with any business, so if we're going to, for your example, we're going to treat this like a business. depending on that business type, there's certain requirements. So if it's a food business, they have to have a food handling permit.
Right.
Typically, by and large, businesses have to get fire
Well,
inspections.
yeah, I was going to say, if I could just jump in real quick and maybe clarify, and I think about and I always forget the name, after Crash Music. What was the name of the little cafe or the Lost Parrot? And they were in for, I don't know how long, 6 months, 4 months, something like that. They were there for a little while, and then they ended up having to close, to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because they were not compliant with the fire department. Now, I recognize that restaurants might be different, and that's why I'm asking the question.
Right. Well, okay, so I'll answer your question as best as my knowledge is. I don't know if they are compliant with the fire code. It was a business before. It changed use. It has now become an assembly. So the fire code has specific requirements that they set forth. They look at the occupancy load.
Right.
They want to know what the square footage of the building is. Because it's an assembly, that means there's a large gathering space. So as a result, they'll look at exits. Are the exits lit? Is there anything in the way? Is there a fire suppression system if that needs to be, if they're cooking or things of that nature? But to answer your question, I don't know. I know I had some conversations with the fire marshal, and he was not aware of it. Now, a couple of weeks have passed.
Right.
That might have changed. Perhaps that.
Well, we can cover that maybe.
Yeah. The fire marshal, as you know, we work with San Juan County, Chris Carden. And so he was, when we have a business like this, at least right now, and I could only speak for the time being, is when we do get a business, we make sure that, and this may not always happen in the past, so I don't want to speak to that, but at least right now, when a business comes in, we make sure that the fire marshal is on board. Because we don't want to have situations like that business you mentioned,
Right.
where they set up shop for them to only have to close down. But, more importantly, it's a life, health, safety issue. The last thing we want is a business to catch on fire, and all that quarter's destroyed. But more importantly, businesses, structures can be replaced. People can't. And so that's why it's important that these requirements are up to code. If it's probably not a huge issue in terms of what they may or may not have to do, just because of their nature of their
Right.
business. But it's still something that is required for everybody. That's just state law.
Right.
So.
Okay. That's the only question I have of Mr. Saavedra. Does anybody else have any questions before we move to our applicant? And could I get the folks that signed the sheet, please, to
Sure.
speak?
And just a procedural thing is anybody that signs in is supposed to state their address as well. So name, address.
Okay.
Just to make sure of that.
Right, thank you. And thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, yes, we might circulate this back around to get, Miss Denny, you're with the Tanning Salon, is that correct? Okay. So just please make sure, if you don't mind, to fill out the rest of the info, excuse me, before you take off. Mr. Bust, we have your address, okay. And Mr. Large, the same, well, he's out there. We know where to find him, but still, we need to make sure this is complete. And our reason for visit, date and time, and all that kind of stuff, if you don't mind. So we'll circulate this back around for those that have signed this. Okay, so I guess we can confidently move on to our applicant. So, Mr. Bost, you're the applicant in this, so if you wouldn't mind. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you guys for your time once again. I do appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. I'll start by addressing the fire marshal's
Yeah, I was going to say, we
concerns.
might as well just dive right into it.
Fire marshal did the inspection on the building last Thursday. Couple of things, he told me I needed to move some stuff out of the heating room, which is done. I had one cabinet I needed to move, that's done. Two things that are going to cost a fairly substantial amount of money, which I'm waiting to see about the outcome of this, but he's given me 30 days to do that, is the exit signs have batteries in them, so they'll light when you lose power. The batteries are faulty in those, so I need to replace those. That's being worked on. Other than that, we're fine. We're good with the fire marshal. And
Okay.
I can forward you guys that email as well, because they did send that to me with the deficiencies that needed correcting. So-
I would just say whatever we're required to do, as far as, I don't personally need to, I don't mean, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Would
I'll forward it to Mr. Saavedra.
Right.
As far as my occupancy load, that it has to be determined by Mr. Cardin, is that his last name? Personally, and he was not the one that did the inspection personally, so he's going over the square footage and will get me the
Okay.
amount of occupancy, and I will comply with that. As I've said all along, it's my desire to comply with the law, not to
course.
break the law.
Right.
So that's why I'm standing here. As far as other issues, there's just a couple of things that I would like to point out. One is the letter that my attorney sent to you guys regarding the federal law on that, and I know your attorneys looked that over, so I'm not going to go into that. I'll let you guys discuss that with your attorney. I'm not an attorney and don't even play one on TV, so there's no point in me talking about that. The other is a concern that was stated last time I was up here, and I'm sorry if I'm unprepared. I did not think I was going to be allowed to speak, so I was not prepared. But the only other issue I can think of was one that was brought up last time, which was that while I would affect zoning, I would have a minor effect because of the church that's sitting right behind me, but it would affect going northward was the concern. However, to the north of me, and that wasn't discussed until closed session, so I couldn't speak up, to the north of me sits Echo Preschool. So I won't even have an effect on the zoning going northward from where I'm sitting. So a conditional use for my church would have no effect on what could go in there business-wise because of the placement of that church and that preschool. My zoning, the only thing that my zoning would really have an effect on is Minium Park. So, other than that, I'm open to any questions you might have for me.
Okay. Commissioners?
I don't have any.
I just have one.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the recommendations from EDAB was that during the duration of your lease, that you actively search for another location. What's the length of your lease, if I can ask?
As long as we're on that, there's a couple of things about that. The length of my lease would terminate in September, and I was at the EDAB meeting. Their recommendation was that between now and the end of August, I look for another place, and I would prefer it be August over September, because if I have to leave, I need to give notice to my landlord. I want to do the right thing by them as well as by the city and by myself. The other thing, he was saying that I needed to look for another business in a commercial, but if you read that, it's I need to look for a business, I need to look for a building that is not commercial.
Oh,
I just think that was a misstatement.
No, that was exactly what their recommendation was when I was there, that I look for a building that is non-commercial
No, I
between
agree, I agree, but I think,
And I realize that was just a misstatement. I just want to make sure that's clarified. The problem with that is, where do you put a church that's not a commercial structure? That's not a very viable alternative to say that I need to find a building that is non-commercial is tantamount to saying you need to not be an Aztec, because where do you put a church that's not in a commercial building? However, on that front, the day after the EDAB board, I had a day off, and we drove, the only other possible zoning in the city of Aztec is a O1 zone that would not put me in a commercial zoning. And the only building that's in the city of Aztec that I could find that is available for lease that's in an O1, because we pulled the maps and drove, is the old bank building over on Chaco, and that is in no way set up and structured in such a way that it would manage a church. So I have already fulfilled the requirements on that part of the EDAP recommendation.
thank you.
Any further
Thank you.
questions of Mr. Boss?
any idea when the fire marshal's gonna come back and do a secondary inspection as far as?
The fire marshal said he didn't want to do a secondary inspection. All I needed to do was take pictures
That's
and
it.
send them to him. And I told him that I was going to wait until after the outcome of this hearing to do the, because the batteries are quite expensive for that. And it's not my building, so it's not like I'm improving a building that I own. I'm improving a building that belongs to somebody else. So I'm waiting for the outcome of the conditional use permit, but they said I had 30 days to bring the building into compliance. So I'm well within that. My meeting with them was last Thursday.
And then your square footage, they'll just follow up with you
Right.
and say, okay, this is what it is. This is your maximum number of occupants at any given time.
Correct.
So there's no real need for them to visit per se, just to look it up on.
And they're the ones that did the measurements.
Right.
And actually, I had them exclude, there's two rooms, there's a little back room, and I didn't even have them include that in the occupancy.
Just your
because
main
it's just the main
assembly
section.
area?
Yeah,
Okay.
just the main assembly area.
All right. You sound like you're getting ready to say something. I just want to double check before we.
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Major, do you have any questions for Mr. Boss? Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Large, I'm just checking for, are you signed up for this particular land use hearing?
Yeah, as
Okay, okay. So we don't have any parties, we have an interested person. Mr. Large, do you have anything you want to add to this, sir?
I just wanted to, he kind of addressed it, but I just wanted to make sure, because the last time we were here, we had a discussion about, you know, other businesses being able to go into that space. And it came out during the EDAB discussion that, yes, there's a church actually already located behind that building, as well as a preschool to the north of it. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, you know, known to everybody so that,
Right.
you know, because it wouldn't really affect, I mean, his church wouldn't really affect the zoning or the ability for another person to go in that building.
Kind of
because
sandwiched in between.
it's already kind of sandwiched in between
Right,
things
right.
that would prevent that from happening anyways. I just wanted to make sure that was known to everybody before any decisions were made.
Right, okay.
That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Large?
No.
Mr. Boss, would you like to ask him any questions? Mr. Vedra? Okay. Okay. I'm going to, does anybody have any further questions of any of the parties that have appeared up until this point?
No.
If not, I'm going to close this particular portion of the land use hearing to testimony and open up discussion amongst the commission. I feel like we kind of covered this pretty thoroughly, and the big thing was waiting for the EDAB recommendation. We have an EDAB recommendation, and I don't know, I feel like, does anybody have anything further to add to the discussion or any comments or anything?
Mayor, I just
Yes,
want,
ma'am.
I've attended the EDAB meetings, and I have great respect for the group of business people that are at EDAB, and they're very interested in the economic development in Aztec, so I'm really supportive of the recommendations that they've made.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out that EDAB stands for Economic Development Advisory Board, for those who are not used to the jargon.
Yeah, sorry about the acronym there. It's like being in the Army again.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Do you wanna-
Were you finished? All right, go ahead,
Okay.
Commissioner Saib.
So, I too, of course, have great respect for our EDAB board, but I do still think that we need to look at a couple of the conditions, especially now knowing that there's a church behind, I mean, I knew that, but didn't think about it, that there's a church behind them in the Echo Preschool there. I think putting a limit on the conditional use permit, I think as long as they want to be there, the building, it's a building that's occupied. And that's important. I mean, it's going to look like something's in there, and I'm not, I still don't agree with having the lights on all the time and that, because we have a lot of other businesses in town that aren't open every day. You know, and we don't require them to leave their lights on during that period. So I think we're kind of going over and above, you know. So anyway, that's just my thought. I would like to see us give them the conditional use permit without that stipulation of to look, you know, because we're not saying what's gonna happen come August if they don't find something. Are we gonna revoke the conditional use permit? That wouldn't really be fair either, especially if there's nothing else that wants to go in there and it could sit empty for another 4 years or something like that. So, I mean, it's a place that looks like it's open. It looks like it's, you know, it's filled with the flowers and stuff that they have out there. So that's just my thoughts. I would like to see us do it without them having to keep the lights on all the time. And I would like to give them the conditional use permit without a deadline.
Does anybody else have any?
Just on that point, Commissioner Seif, if you look at the actual language of paragraph 6 of EDAB's recommendation, I think that would leave some discretionary nature for the commission.
As far as, and the city, as far as if they didn't find a spot after the
On
termination of
number,
their lease.
number 6,
Yeah, number 6,
the lack of
may result.
may result in the, okay.
Yeah, it's not shall,
Open-ended.
or,
Okay, but then the number 7, they want them to actively search for an alternate location that is not in a commercial district during the duration of the lease. So that's why, that's the part that, to me, I was wondering if we were putting a cap on it.
my issue is and to your point about other businesses, I mean, I'm comfortable with EDAB's recommended motion with the exception of the first part, the church must have lights turned on at all times. I mean, we don't require that of other businesses, and I don't necessarily feel like that would be necessary, because if I had a sandwich shop or whoever's filling the old bistro building, to say, well, you look like you're closed, well, we are closed, you know, and I don't think we would put that burden on them or any other main avenue business. So, I mean, I believe I get the spirit of the condition, that we don't want it to look like a vacant building except for 1 or 2 periods a week where there's, you know, for a few hours at a time, if that makes sense. But I am comfortable with the other part. So would it be appropriate to make a motion with the exception of number 1? You know, if we were to go with that particular, okay.
I'm good with
So is there anybody that wants to add?
Yeah, Mayor, personally, I'm just back to the original motion I made
I
last time,
understand.
where I just
Yeah.
don't think there should be any conditions at all. And I get EDAB's recommendation, but to me, it came to me, I hope they're coming from a good place, but to me, it's like, well, we'll recommend that you can be there, but you're not, you need to look for another place. Like, you're welcome there, but not really welcome there, because you need to keep looking. But as it's written, they just need to, search for an alternate location, which they already went out and looked for it, and there isn't anything, so.
And I can't.
It's just hard.
I get what you're saying. I can't propose to know what everybody on EDAB was thinking.
Right.
That's why we have them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, and from what I understand, obviously I wasn't there, and I know Mayor Pro Tem had to recuse herself, but I understand it went on for a while. I mean, I think there's a few folks in the room that were there. It was a fairly thorough discussion. And I understand we're not always, or very likely, will we ever satisfy everybody's particular issues. That's why sometimes this is difficult. And usually, in my experience, not just as an elected official, but just negotiating with people in a managerial position, in a leadership position, usually if you don't get everything you want, but you get a lot of what you want, it's probably a decent compromise. And I feel like we might be in one of those kind of instances here. I mean, that's just my own personal thoughts. So with that said, does anybody have anything they'd like to add before we close to discussion?
Mayor, I just have one more clarification, I guess.
Sure.
So with the conditional use of number 7 about actively, so if they do actively search for another location and can't find something,
I
what
guess
happens?
we may have to revisit this, I don't know.
They'd have to come back and pay another fee for another conditional use? Oh, sorry.
I don't think so.
I can't look at you, sorry.
I'm not reading it that way, because it also says they have to actually,
I'm not-
search for one, not find one.
Right.
Okay,
It
so
doesn't say they have
it
to.
leaves it open? You
That's a fairly vaguely worded, and I don't know if that was intentional, and again, I can't speak or propose to
Okay.
know what those folks were thinking when they
I'm
worded it that way.
I just want to make sure.
You just go on at face value of what they're saying.
I was just trying to make sure that we weren't, if they can't find anything, that we're
Right.
gonna kick them out.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I could, I was looking at number 6 as well, and it says may result, not will.
Right.
Or shall,
So that
right,
means that,
right.
okay.
Okay.
So
I think there's
that
we're not
still
gonna, there
covers
won't be
it. Okay.
a cut and that's it.
Okay.
Well,
So-
even then, I think it just kind of leaves it open to where, if something awesome does come up,
They can, yeah.
look at that, take that, and I think they would, because if, they
Right.
want to get in a bigger building, if they grow and stuff,
I just want to make sure that
point
Yeah,
behind it, I
both
think,
ends.
is valid.
Understand.
and,
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, I
just
understand.
Yeah.
keep an eye out, just so someday, you know, if it does develop, you know, it can open up for a great spot for
Okay.
something else on Main Street.
Okay.
That's how I read it.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to close this to discussion, and I am ready to make a motion. Move to approve CUP 19-02, a request from Danny Boss for a conditional use permit to allow a church in the C1 district at 222 North Main Avenue. With the following conditions, so EDAB's recommending motion, and I'm recommending that we eliminate condition 1. So can I just state it as to include conditions 2 through 7?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to read this again. I'd like to make a motion to move to approve conditional use permit 19-02, a request from Danny Boss for a conditional use permit to allow a church in the C1 district at 222 North Main Avenue with the following conditions, numbers 2 through 7, as listed on the staff summary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Sharon, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Stover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rice,
Aye.
Commissioner Sykes,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
I do appreciate y'all's time, and I know it is valuable.
We appreciate your time as well. Thank you for coming through this twice.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's not
and Mr. Boss, I'm going to ask, I have Miss Denny here, so before you and Mr. Large leave, if you wouldn't mind taking this back off to the side and making sure all the blocks are filled out appropriately, please. And the only one that is listed on the second conditional use permit is Misty Denny. So we are ready to move into conditional use permit 2020-01, and Mr. Saavedra, if you would, we're ready. Okay?
Right. Mr. Mayor, City
Sure.
Commission.
Thank
Let's do
you.
this one more time. So CUP 2020-1, a conditional use to allow a beauty and tanning salon in a O1 office and institutional zoning district. If you can, please, there. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So, this comes before you, an application, and the property owner is Southside Waters User Association, and it is represented by Misty Denny. Misty is actually the one that wants to put forward a beauty and tanning salon. At 300, it's more 302, but it's same parcel, just two different addresses on the parcel. This is the subject property. Prior to the tanning salon, it actually used to house High Desert Credit Union. But they since relocated, and Ms. Denny is looking to place her tanning salon at this location. This is to give you an idea of who the applicant is, the address, the acreage, zoning. It is in the MRA district, Metropolitan Redevelopment Area, and they are requesting approval of a CUP so that they could be allowed to operate and follow the spirit of the zoning law. So again, why are we here? Well, O1 district is not a commercial zoning district. So if you look at what the code states, is that this use is allowed in an O1 district, however, it has to be reviewed by the Community Development Department and approved by the City Commission. That's why we're here, that's why we bring it before you. So, subject property, O1 district, it's actually right by the library. You see residential in near proximity, and you see, actually, this is General Services yard. This is the MRA district, right there. To give you an idea, street view, bird's eye view, and then one more location. So again, with all conditional use permits, we have to look to see, is this compatible? Goes through an analysis. Community development feels that this use is not going to be detrimental to the surrounding properties. especially we were a little concerned about residential and near proximity, but considering what the use is, considering operational hours, we don't feel there's gonna be loud music, bright lights, anything that can be deemed as a negative externality that can affect surrounding properties. In addition to that, you brought up the fire code. Ms. Denny has actually reached out to Chris Carden, and he reviewed the building. Did find a little bit issues similar to the previous one. There was some lights that needed to be replaced. Those have since been taken care of. So Ms. Denny is in good shape with the fire marshal, and everything is good to go. So community development doesn't feel that this use within this location is going to be detrimental to surrounding properties, and it falls in the spirit of the law of not only the MRA, but the overall zoning district. And with that, we're recommending approval with conditions. I just wanted to point out this thing. This is ordinance. This isn't us making it up. A conditional use permit does not transfer over. And I just want to make sure that's out there
Right.
for not only the commission, the applicant, and for anybody in the audience, is that anytime property switches over, businesses change hands, the conditional use doesn't follow. Only a variance follows with that property. Conditional use doesn't. So I just wanted to put that out there. We didn't make that up. That's actually in the ordinance code, so I'm assuming some commission made it up at some point. But actually, that's typical across municipalities. CUPs do not transfer over. And with that, I stand for any questions.
So just for, I feel like I know why that was clarified, but just for clarification purposes, the conditional use permit, so let's say, for example, and correct me again if I'm wrong, please, if, I don't know, maybe Mr. Padilla sees that the tanning salon is a big hit, and he's like, hey, I want to buy that from you, you know, then he would have to go through this entire thing. It doesn't, I mean, he could hypothetically buy it, but that doesn't mean that could be a new commission. It could be 10 years from now.
Correct.
And the commission sitting up here 10 years from now might say, no. I mean, so that's,
Yes.
okay. All right, so, figured out I was right. Okay, does anybody have any other questions, Mr. Surveyor? This seems fairly straightforward to me, but obviously we can ask questions or make comments if we need them, Mr. Surveyor.
No.
Hearing none, thank you for your time, sir. Ms. Denny, you are the applicant. If you would mind just... Good evening.
Good evening. I am Misty Denny, and I am the owner of Tanning & Company Salon. And even though I am a resident of Farmington, I have chosen to place my business in Aztec. I know several people that live in Aztec. I've been driving to Aztec for the last 10 years to get my hair and nails done, even though I live in Farmington. So when I decided to do a tanning salon, I talked to Lynette Vick, which is here to support me. She is my nail tech. She was telling me that she would gladly and excited to be in my new adventure and move to the salon with me. As Bethany Krebs that does my hair, she's moved in with me as well. And also with Amy Lucero, which is a resident hairstylist here in Aztec as well. So with those together, we want to make an all-service salon here in Aztec. As we grow, we want to see Aztec grow as well. And so that's why I'm here, because of the small community, close-knit community, and I think we could do really well here. And bring in those services to Aztec that are already in the larger communities around us, so that way Aztec can flourish as well.
Okay,
And that's all I have.
thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Denny?
Mayor, I have one. So it's tanning, nails, and hair.
Yes, sir. Yes, beauty salon. Yes, tanning and beauty salon.
I wish my wife doesn't listen to these meetings.
Well, she's more than welcome. Please send her in.
I don't know.
Although, you know, it is important whenever possible to keep our dollars in Aztec, so, I mean,
Yes,
I'm glad that she is listening to these meetings.
And also, to kind of go back to what I was listening to on the previous, I already do have my establishment license from the state of New Mexico, so we do have our license there as well, and our ladies at the salon also have their license
Okay,
current. So.
very good. Any further questions?
I just have one more, just 'cause I'm curious. Is it spray tanning or like lights?
It's lights. But that's
I don't
what
know.
we plan on doing. Is we get to grow, then we're going to add those services as well. I originally planned on having, you guys may not know what it is, it's a red light therapy bed. And it helps people with collagen, psoriasis, and things like that. So eventually, if we do really well here in Aztec, I'm hoping to include those services in my salon as well.
Awesome.
And I think Austin also wants to ask if there's like a punch card for visits or something. So I'm gonna punch on that. But I appreciate you laughing at my joke. So does anybody else have any questions or?
I don't.
No.
Okay, I don't either.
It's pretty straightforward.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ms.
Have a
Denny. Mr. Savager, do you have any questions of the applicant? Okay. There are no other parties that have signed up to speak for this, so I will close this conditional use permit hearing to, I'll close it to all testimony and open it up for commission discussion.
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
I agree. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or anything they want to rehash or anything? Okay. In that case, I will close the discussion and
Ready for a motion?
make a motion, yeah.
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the conditional use permit 2020-01, a request from Southside Water Users Association, represented by Misty Denny, for a conditional use permit to allow a beauty and tanning salon in an O1 district at 300 and 302 Ash Street, Aztec, New Mexico, with the following conditions of 1 through 4.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Cheryl, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
Mayor Snover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Sykes.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, we have Commissioner, City Manager, and Department reports. Mr. Mueller?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to thank the Aztec Chamber for putting on the recent candidate forum that we had over at the Senior Center. Early voting still continues. The last day is going to be Saturday, and that hours of 10 to 6, with Election Day being Tuesday, March 3rd. I want everybody to keep in mind the census is coming up. It's critical that we get a good count for funding purposes a lot of times, so that's going to be coming about real soon. To Arvin's point, been to a couple of meetings with him recently concerning broadband within the city and the county. We've got a group together working on that. Ken George, our electric director, and Wallace McGay will be involved with that planning as well. As we determine, I think our next step is to determine what all is available here as far as broadband and fiber and all that good stuff, and could really benefit Aztec, so we're involved in that as well. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, on that?
Sure.
So I just had a quick question on the census, because everyone, and even the sign, we're counting on you. Counting on us to what? Like, I don't,
Fill out your,
that's all it is, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have asked me, like, oh, everyone's talking about the census, and we're counting on you, but I just don't know to what.
Yeah, you'll get.
Everyone gets a sheet, just
Yeah,
make
you'll
sure
get a
you fill it.
card, and
Okay.
then there will be, if folks have moved or whatever the case is, or they don't fill out, there will be census workers that kind of do a door-to-door thing
Okay.
to try and count.
if
But it
you
doesn't
don't,
mail
if
to
you don't
everybody.
fill it out, they come and try to find you.
Yeah, they'll come in.
But it goes out, it's not like you have to come down and vote.
No, no,
No.
no, no, it will come to you.
I was just curious, I have no
Yeah.
idea how it
Yeah.
works, so, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
If I may, as a clarification, mid-March, you'll be getting notices, and you have 3 ways to fill out the census. One will be online.
Yes.
Second will be by phone, and a third be written and mailing it in. If the census does not hear from you from any of those 3 methods, then they will be sending out people door to door.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ed.
Okay.
And it is important, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, federal funding is directly
A lot
tied,
of money, yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
Congressional districts,
Yeah.
I mean, just a whole host of things. It's done every 10 years.
Right. Yeah, and not coincidentally, it coincides with the districting maps and things like that for elections as well, so. And redistribution, you know, congressional representation and things like that. So it's very important. It only takes a couple minutes. Mr. Gobble?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Lewis?
A few brief things. One, this is the first time that the census has ever been done online. So this is kind of fun. It's a new idea. I think it's great. I think we'll get a lot more participation that way. And you can see how much it actually means to us here and in the community. Water Commission meets next week, next Wednesday, so I'm anticipating attending that. It should be an interesting meeting, I think. Keep in mind, we're also still looking at long-term drought in this community, so we have to keep an eye on things. We're still in stage 1 drought restrictions, which means be good here, gone, don't overwater. And that's about it. And I did enjoy the candidate forum. It was good to have everybody up there talking and giving us their positions on a lot of different issues. And it was good that they were there. Thank you. And Mr. Trujillo, thank you for coming in and getting us an idea of what you all are doing over there. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Randall?
I actually did attend the candidate forum also. It was great. And that is all.
Okay. Commissioner Sipe?
Just a couple things. It's been kind of a crazy week. I did go to a Northwest Mexico Seniors yesterday. Yesterday. Just a brief meeting, just talking about, I'm sure you guys all saw the headlines about the Blanco Center and what was going on there. So just a brief meeting where our interim executive director was kind of giving us a heads up about the direction that they're going. It's nothing set in stone yet, but what they're looking at doing there. So we did get an update on that. So, so there is some transitional stuff coming with Northwest, with the RFP and some things coming down the line that nothing is where I can really talk about it because it may not the way I talk about it may not happen. But anyway. So just look for that to come. I do have I did participate last Friday with, I was asked to serve on a panel to interview the new candidates for the MPO officer, and the MPO planner. We only had one candidate for each position, but I'm telling you, I don't know, like Julie Baird from Farmington said, she says, I don't know how the stars aligned, but we had 2 really good candidates. Of course, it'll be through Farmington because they're our fiscal agent. It'll be, the hiring will be tied with the city of Farmington. Right. But it'll be exciting to have that office filled. They've been understaffed for a while now, so it'll be nice to have them fully staffed again. Mary, her last name just, Holton, thank you, just went, she just retired, so it's good to have that. I do have an MPO meeting in Kirtland on Thursday, so I'll be attending that. The other thing, I just want to encourage everybody to get out and vote. It's so important to do that, and no matter who you're supporting, you need to voice your opinion, because if you don't vote, you don't have any room to gripe. So, so just get out there. I did enjoy the candidate forum also, some good questions. And then I think the mayor's ball's coming up. I don't know if somebody else was going to talk about that. I'll be bowling, so instead of dancing.
Okay.
And then also just a heads up to you guys that the New Mexico Municipal League District meeting will be coming up too. I forgot the date, but it's in March. But it'll be before the new commissioners take office because of the new election code. So I'm not sure how I probably need to talk to Carla and Steve about how we want to handle that. Because I am like
You're it.
well, I'm not the chairperson, but I'm the next one under that. So I don't know if I need to go to that or not. So anyway, I'll be discussing that, but just keep it in mind that it is, and it's good. They give you updates on the legislative stuff, kind of what's coming, and so it's a good thing to go for our district.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Commissioner Sipe, actually. The brown bag lunch thing?
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me about that.
Okay.
We are, the Northwest Mexico Seniors is having a fundraiser. It's called a Brown Bag Lunch. The orders and the money has to be in on Thursday. It'll be delivered on Tuesday the 3rd on Election Day. I had a flyer. It's coming from Fat Boys. You have a choice of like a roast beef, a turkey, a veggie.
There's a fourth one.
There's a fourth one. And then you get chips, a cookie, and a bottle of water for $10. So if anybody's interested in that, Cindy at the senior center is taking the orders and collecting the money. It has to be prepaid. But it's a fundraiser to help us fund home-delivered meals for our seniors here in San Juan County.
And they do have gluten-free bread,
Yeah, so
just so you know.
anyway, just thank you for reminding me about that.
Very important
Commissioner
point,
Lewis.
thank you.
It's a good point for me.
So get your orders in.
23rd is the district meeting in
Okay.
Gallup.
Thank you.
In Gallup.
Yeah, I knew it was in Gallup.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I also attended the forum and found it informative and interesting, and appreciate everybody that was there. I've mostly been working on my piano project, and I'll be asking for a place on the agenda next week to do a presentation, so stay tuned for that.
And we were both at the EDAB meeting, so I forgot to mention that meeting too.
Oh.
But we were both there.
That's true. Okay.
Is that all? Okay, thank you. Just a couple of things. The mayor's ball is coming up on March 7th, so we need to get our head count into Sherilyn and/or Carla, whoever's spearheading that, for our table. I also went to the candidate forum. I thought it was great. I appreciate the participation and the candidates. I feel like did a pretty solid job across the board, answering questions and kind of giving us a little bit of an insight into who they are as potential elected officials. And, I appreciate, that's democracy in action. We don't always get as many people voting, but it is important to vote. And if you haven't voted yet, get out there. We have 1 week from today is going to be the results. By this time in a week, we'll know who the new commissioners are, or returning commissioners, as it may be. So we'll have at least one new commissioner. Get out there, and if they come knocking on your door or you have any questions, I'm sure you can reach out to them via different avenues, social media, cell phones, or whatever. That's on them to sort that out. But looking forward to seeing what the results look like. I think it's been a pretty well-run race, and I'm wishing best of luck to all those involved as they kind of head down the home stretch for the last week of this election cycle. Let's see. I have an Echo Board meeting tomorrow, and because with the new CEO being kind of new, still kind of getting her feet under, in a manner of speaking, instead of every other month, we've been doing meetings every month. So I've had to, myself and the other board members have had to adjust to that a little bit. And I want to give a little plug to the Aztec motocross folks. They came to the last meeting. I thought they were great. And I've since spoken to Mr. Gallegos. He gave me a schedule, and we're looking, I think they're doing like a practice round on March 7th, which is a week from this weekend. So it's really about a week and a half away. And then their first race weekend of the season is the very next weekend on the 13th and 14th. So I think motocross is fun. I've never been out to the track to watch a race, but I'm going to try and get out there at least a couple of times this season. And I think it's a huge, it could be a huge boon to the city, and continue to grow and bring folks from out of the area that like to race motorcycles and make lots of noise. So it's a good time. I love watching motocross. So I think it's going to be a good thing for the community. Yes, sir, Mr. Large.
I have something to add to that. The hotel's already at 74% occupancy for their first race of the season.
Wow.
That's great news. I mean, and if you could care less about motocross, the fact that people are coming into Aztec and they're spending money, and then hopefully maybe going to get a tanning salon thing or a haircut or something, So and stop by and worship, and then go grab hopefully the alcohol thing on Sunday will pass, and they can go grab somewhere. All these things are starting to come together, and I feel like it's a collective of all the folks in the community making it happen. So that's exciting. And that's all I have. So I appreciate everybody's attendance. So are there any department heads that would like to give a quick report?
I'd like to, but I think I need to give you an update on what I'll call the water situation in East Aztec. As you know, we had a leak out there. Well, basically Delane was looking at our flow data, and we realized that we had a leak. So we went out there looking for it. It took us a week to find it. But finally found the location of the leak. And then we had to do a one call, so we were, sure that we weren't any utilities involved. And once we had that all clear, on Thursday afternoon, we went out to fix what we thought was going to be an easy leak to fix. And uncovered it and found out it was in a 2-inch pipe underneath the road in a conduit. And in order to, basically what happened is, in order to repair it, we had to cut the pipe, which drained all the water system, drained the water tank out there. Everybody out there was without water that evening. The crew, in order to drain all that, they had to wait for it to drain. They were working till 1 a.m. to fix the leak on Thursday night. And then, of course, after we got it fixed, we had to start filling the tank. And there was a leaky valve that caused us a slow start on that, but on Friday morning we realized the problem. Got it going. We had to haul water out there with trucks and start the pump, and it took till the end of that day anyway to fill the tank. So the folks out there were actually the people that came by were very pleasant, and we're glad we were fixing it. We thought they would be pretty upset about not having water for a while. But then once we got it full, there was a lot of air in the system. So today we were going around releasing air. People were complaining about not getting water, but getting mostly air. It pulled up the sediment, so they were complaining. So I just wanted to let you know that that's the situation. We did go out today and spent most of the day purging air. We think everything's back to normal and should settle down. And we discovered 2 issues. One is that the pump up to the tank is insufficient. Luckily, today, or yesterday, we had a pre-bid to start the construction of a larger pump station there that will solve that problem. So that's already in the works. And hopefully by fall, we will have a large pump station there with 2 pumps bigger than the one we have. So the next time if that happens, we can fill the tank pretty quickly. And the other issue is we couldn't shut off the system so that we didn't have to drain the tank. So we're going to look at inserting valves live so that we can shut that off and we don't have to drain that tank. Even if we have to cut off service to people, when we're done, we can fill the lines
Isolate it
pretty
easier,
quickly.
yeah.
So I wanted to give you an update in case you get questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse.
Real fast. So on the, basically coming out of the tank, there's no valve just to shut it off so you can work on anything.
There are 2 valves, but neither one of them would shut off the flow
No kidding.
to the north part.
Oh my gosh.
We did discover a valve today because we started tracing the lines. We did discover a valve today that we won't have to put in, but we'll still have to put in 1 or 2 more valves to just separate the system.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's.
Tell your guys thanks for
Yes, yeah,
for
for
their
sure.
hard work for
Good job.
1 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you.
Good job, too.
Not bad.
Thank you for the update. Are there any other department heads? All right.
It was done for effect.
Good evening, Mayor and
Good evening.
Commissioner. I just wanted to let you guys know real quick that we did receive the AKC Reunite Emergency Disaster Preparedness Trailer yesterday. It's very nice. It's very loaded with stuff. So I was thinking maybe I would try to bring it over to the next commission meeting and have it out here in the parking lot so you guys could see it.
That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
I like that.
So I will do that, and I have the kennel clubs from Durango that helped make all this happen will come down Monday. They want to get some pictures and stuff, so they'll be there Monday morning about 11. But
And this is for,
in the event of an emergency
Right.
in our regional area here. So it's hopefully something that just gets to sit there and look pretty, and we
Right.
don't need it, but in case there is an emergency, like Durango with the fires and stuff, they could come down, get the trailer. It has kennels, it has identification, hoses, water, generator.
so it's to help flooding, fire, natural disaster.
Any
So
type of
like
natural disaster.
Pets or,
We can take in the pets and
can be rescued
identify-
basically and not be left,
Right.
you
Right, so they don't get left behind.
Right.
So, it's a beautiful trailer. And
I'm looking
it's-
forward to seeing it, yeah.
Yeah, so I will make that happen. We'll have it out here next commission meeting.
Thank
so
you.
you
Oh,
guys can
great.
see it, so.
And thanks for your work on that.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Okay. Any other department heads? I thought Saavedra was getting ready to get up. He's just moving his chair. All right, anybody else? Okay. Thank you again for everybody's input tonight, and move to adjourn.